right, guys, thanks a lot for joining us today. I think everybody in the audience is super excited to hear some of your thoughts around your journey and, the questions that I'm sure everybody have in their mind or been asking people around. So it's a great stage for us to talk about a few things and share some of the learnings, right? So I want to skip my intro because I spent 30 minutes before that doing that. So I'll start with you. You want to take some time to talk about yourself a little bit?
Founder of myUpchar.com, or as it was explained earlier, we are trying to solve for healthcare awareness and access in Bharat. We create tons and tons of healthcare content in Hindi and 12 other regional languages, text, video, 3D animation. We are right now building a cartoon series explaining healthcare issues in young women, etc., etc. Serving roughly 25 million users every month. We are the largest website in India today in healthcare industry. Also, for the access side, we do online consultation. We do medicine delivery to the last mile, rural areas. We are building our own diagnostic chain because we couldn't find a reliable partner for the healthcare delivery at the rural level. And we expect doing tons of these experiments in Lucknow and 150 kilometers around that area. So tons of that work is happening. My background, I'm not a doctor, basically an engineer from DC, then Stanford, then went to Amazon, learned how engineering can actually create, mass scale, have an impact at mass scale. Came back to India, started a small company in social media space, sold it in 2014, started an e-commerce venture, burnt all the money that I earned in my previous venture. But during that journey, we realized, as we converted the site into Hindi, we realized that suddenly Ayurveda sales became like 50%. And then my partner and I, we started discussing, and what we realized is that there's actually no healthcare content in India in regional languages. Only thing you have is aajtak.com and indianexpress.com saying कैंसर के इलाज के 5 तरीके.
Right.
ये जूस पियो और 45 दिन में कैंसर दूर.
Yeah.
केला. डॉक्टर का दावा 9 दिन में कैंसर का इलाज.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that topic more in detail when we start talking around that, right? So
that's what we set out to solve. We have a considerable amount of content, considerable traction over there, and now we are trying to actually do a last healthcare service.
Awesome. Thank you. Vaishali?
So I am Vaishali Neotia. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Merxius. We've spent the last several years, working with the enterprise sector and doing augmented virtual reality services, which is basically extended reality as an umbrella term. And what that enabled us to do is, and we were always trying to, figure out a way to productize, because anything that you're trying to do, trying to create a dent in the universe, it needs to be done at scale. And so what our experience basically resulted in is a product called Red, and we're offshooting this as a separate company. What Red does is it takes any training content, all of your archaic training content in engineering companies, which are boring presentations and 30 pages of documents that nobody reads, and it takes all of that existing CAD data and then converts it into content that can be consumed by today's employees, millennials with very little attention span, and it's experiential learning, so they can see now whatever was written in a document. They can see how it's working. They can see machines, the processor around it, and they can experience this in augmented reality, in virtual reality, on the mobile, on the web. So it's a great way for them to increase recall value as well as actually learn. So 90% of whatever you learn in a presentation, as everybody here would be aware, is lost. And these guys would now be able to retain and recall all of that. So we've done this, and it's a completely plug-and-play software. So there's no coding involved. Engineering companies can just off the bat start doing XR and web and mobile content enabled stuff. So that's what we've done. My background is, of course, techie. I'm an engineer. And then I've done a few courses here and there from ISB, from Stanford, from the UN, if you'll believe it, from startup leadership, bunch of things. Like I was just, there's so much time apparently. I did so many things. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here. So looking forward to all the questions.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me again. So I'm Sarang Lakare, founder of InTouchApp. In a nutshell, we are a mobile-first company trying to solve problems in the mobile-first world, building products that are mobile-first, right? I think we are in a very, very exciting times. When I say mobile-first, it's a completely different way of thinking how we do things on a daily basis, right? And our focus is on professionals and small businesses. So we are building products where you're always thinking or doing things on mobile first and PC comes as second, right? If you look at all the products that you're using today, especially global products, you will find that they were built in the valley where it's assumed that you always have PC, you always have internet, right? So they are all PC first, right? Or email address for that matter, right? Every product that comes out of the valley will ask you to log in via email, for example, right? So we are trying to change all of that. We are trying to build products, like we are trying to rethink products, how they would be built when in a mobile-first world where phone number is your primary identity, right? You may or may not even have email, right? And things like that. So we are building multiple products. Our flagship product is InTouchApp itself, which is a relationship manager based on top of your phone contacts. So today, for example, all apps that you use will use your phone contacts database as the primary network, right? And Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, and everything. So how do you manage these contacts better so that these apps work better for you? So these are the kind of problem we are trying to solve. We have over 1.5 million registered users. We manage over 1 billion contacts today for people all around the world. So we are a truly global company. Only I think 15% of our user base is in India. But most of the user base is global. And a quick background, I have a PhD in computer science. I was in the US for 11 years before shifting back to India and trying to do something interesting here.
Hello everyone, my name is Abhay. I'm the CTO of Stepsetgo. So basically Stepsetgo is a fitness rewarding platform that rewards you for every step that you take. And so it's a very simple idea. Like people in this era are leading a sedentary life, like including myself. There's a point where I used to sit in front of computer, used to code through day and night, and never move, right? So it's a thing that you need to get out of your zone and just maybe walk for a bit, just go out and do something. So that's why we built Stepsetgo. It was an idea that basically one of our co-founders took over, and then we built upon it. We built a lot of stuff upon it, like we are now introducing challenges. You can challenge your friend, you can make them walk outside. It will remind you to basically walk at least some amount of steps every day, and you need to just increase your number of steps basically. So but what the thing that you get with walking is you earn something like a coin, right? Every 1,000 steps that you take, you get 1 coin. You collect these coins over a period of time. Then you go to our bazaar, where we have done a lot of brand tie-ups, including big brands like Bajaj, Xiaomi, Leaf, etc. And we are still trying our best to basically get them on board. So as you collect these coins, you can then avail free products and offers from different brands. And it's the material, the material stuff that it makes, if anything that gets motivated, that motivates you, we will take that in our bazaar. That's what the idea is. So that's the crux of the application. I'll give you a short background on myself. I have done bachelor's from Nagpur University and master's in VIT. I work for companies like IBM, Book My Show, and Folk Media Private Limited. So that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Like, it's a great place to be in. Get healthy and get paid, right? Who doesn't like it, right? So, hey, so let's dive right into it, right? I have a few questions that, I usually, when I meet startup founders, they always have these sort of questions, and I wanted to run those by you guys and, get some of your thoughts. The first one that I always end up getting is, how do I make the right technology bet? What is the tech stack that I need to choose? Which cloud provider should I start with? Like, Sarang, I'll start with you. Like, do you have any thoughts around, like, what's the right process to choosing the right stack, the right cloud, per se?
Right stack or right cloud?
Or both,
Or
maybe,
both. So I think from a startup perspective, it's very, very simple. Right stack, you just start with whatever you know. So for example, we started with Django because I knew Python and I was the first person starting to code on the product, right? Right cloud, it's again very simple to begin with because the cloud provider that gives you some credits, just use that, right?
Right. That's a great answer. It's an honest one, right? And again, start with what you know how to code. Don't try and learn the new language that is the thing.
Absolutely,
or whatnot,
absolutely.
Right? There you go. So that's a good tip for us as well, right? Just provide more credits, yes. And that's a great way to start.
But credits is one thing, but like for example, we got a lot of Azure credits, but we did not utilize even $1 out of it. So credits is one thing. The other important thing, of course, is simplicity. You don't want to spend time figuring out how the nitty-gritties work, right? My vision of cloud is that you just put something out there and it should just work.
Right.
And should take care of itself, right? I don't want to hire in DevOps. I don't want to hire people who are spending time just figuring out how do you scale or how do you, why is this not talking to this guy and stuff like that, right? So cloud complexity is extremely important in the beginning. You should go with cloud, which is really, really easy to set up and get started.
Right. It makes prototyping so easy, right? I mean, you don't
exactly,
have to worry
because
about things.
Absolutely, because early stages you are going to iterate a lot, and so you want to go with tech stack as well as cloud, where you can. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in changing things.
Right.
Definitely, and also analytics are important.
Right. So I mean, you really when you're building in this journey, I mean, those are some good takeaways. Start with what you know, right? Start free. Obviously, you don't want to spend too much fortune before you know what the product's going to do, whatnot, right? There's this tangent, and the second question I always end up getting, right? And I think it's the media and Mark Zuckerberg that has messed everybody up with this move fast, break things, man. Listen, he had a different problem that he had to solve, in my opinion. He had the product, but he had a competitor, MySpace, that was fierce. So that motto worked for him. But since then, it became a cliche, right? Every startup that you talk to, like, yeah, move fast, break things, like, and that piles onto tons of technical debt, right? And next thing you know, when you're scaling, oh my God, what just happened, right? So maybe, Abhay, do you have any thoughts around, like, what's the right balance you strike there?
So you need to keep a right balance there. There are certain sins which you shouldn't do as a startup. You should you should make sure all the customer data which is there, it's very secure. And even though you're making fast and breaking things, this happens. Like, you build stuff, it breaks, you fix it, you monitor it, perform some logging around it. But there has to be a right balance to it. It shouldn't be a thing where you're just building it fast and not thinking about the product itself. Right? You need to first make the product definition concrete. Take the requirements out, build it completely. Make sure that it is relatively stable. It doesn't have to be completely stable at that point in time, right? Even like if it breaks, then just look why is it breaking, and then move forward. That's it. But losing customer data and compromising on security and those kind of aspects, you should never ever do that. That's sin. That's a very sinful thing that you can do.
Vaishali, yeah.
Just to add to what Abhay said, I agree that ideally we'd all love to start. When we build, we want to build for scale. But given your funding situation, given the time crunch, it's all, and you have to iterate very fast, because initially for bootstrap startups, you're just trying to get a beta version of your product out,
right?
On which you can get customers, you can get investors,
right?
That we have something, and so of course you will build up technical debt. It's just that that's something that happens. Yeah. But what I would say is, once you achieve the first level of your product market fit, you should start thinking about building the scale.
Right. That's a great tip in a way, right? So, go ahead, Rajat. Yeah.
Quick point, and I'll share a small anecdote. So we built this entire, prescription writing software on mobile app and this and that. And we did a health camp in a village near Aligarh, and we said, we'll do video consultation. So we'll have video monitors at that village, And then we'll have doctors in our office who will do video consultation. We'll not take doctors there,
Right.
so that we can train them. This is how video consultation happens, educate them about it, and then do a cam there. So generator didn't work. Electricity was not. Generator didn't work.
Right.
Generator worked. Then the power switch had some problem. The wire was a little short, so light aati jati rahe.
Right.
Then app had some problem. The questions were getting assigned to some other doctor, not our internal. And finally, what we were doing was we were using Zoom and we were using WhatsApp
Right.
to, get the whole thing, get the prescriptions transferred to us, and connecting some battery of car. Somebody
Right.
had powerful battery, putting through some AMP thing to get the printout of that prescription.
Right.
So, whenever we talk about technology, I think there is going to be, technical debt. It's going to be an ongoing process. I don't think you can ever get away with it. Like even at Amazon, there was always technical.
Right.
It was built at a certain time for a certain particular use case. And when you take it to field conditions, things will break.
Right.
And you have to adjust accordingly. You have to solve for it. All of things will be done. But over time, you have to scale and you have to retrofit the data, and it's just an ongoing. I think from an engineering perspective, there's a, as Vaishali was saying, there's a cost-benefit ratio to everything. So we have to adjust.
Right. So I think my takeaway from that is, yes, it's imminent. You cannot avoid technical debt, but you should somewhere in your mind know what it is. And then when the time comes, you're essentially able to go back and pay it forward. So, take the path that to least resistance to try and get the product out, right? Vaishali briefly touched on a critical topic, right? That's another question that I get from people, product market fit. Like, how do I know that I have a product market fit? Like, you're iterating, you're doing a bunch of things, something came out, but then is this the right product, right? Like, what's the process around that? Like, how do you know?
So essentially, when you think of PMF, obviously the idea is that you go out, you find a problem, you find an innovative way to solve it, and then you see if if that can be replicated. You see a pattern emerging, and then you see if that can be sort of replicated across. The idea of rinse and repeat, right? But one of the most important things with PMF is that I feel like it's not a discrete point; it's more like a continuum. If you consider, the market, so market keeps changing. It's dynamic. It's in flux. And as that changes, so should your product.
Right.
Look at Kodak, right? I mean, they had a great PMF. Market changed. They didn't change with it, and they lost out. But then when you think of how the product changes, of course there can be pivots, major, minor, but there can also be evolution of product, right? So, like in our case, for example, when we started out with Red, the idea was to create all of this training material, whatever form it was in, into XR, so extended reality content. But what we realized was that a lot of companies we were targeting were not ready with the infrastructure. Because to consume extended reality content for experiential learning, you need hardware. You need like a VR headset, you need like a HoloLens, you need iPads, and whatever else. So, so we made minor pivots there. So what we did was we were like, okay, fine. We will also enable this to be mobile and web friendly, so that you can start there, but the option for XR-enabled content is also there, right? But if you look at, say, product evolution, for instance, what we did was initially we were targeting Red for engineers who could use our software and create their their custom training sequences. They could time the sequence. They could sort of create what operation comes where and export that in across the web, mobile, and all of that. But what we realized is that a lot of our customers had similar instructions with the tools that they were using. And so we were wondering, if there's a way that we could use this pattern, make it easier for them. So we, we basically enabled, AI-enabled semantics into the system so that, the tooling can be done quicker, faster, and then it helped everybody across the board. So that's sort of product evolution that we went through. And so, yeah, I think these are important when you think of PMF.
Right. So this always evolving process, right? You're gonna find one product market fit, but you need to be mindful how long this is gonna last. Like there's this clear notion of the S curve on the startup, right? and knowing when you're actually celebrating your success, having that hindsight saying, is this going to last for too long, right? Is the product going to change, right? Should I be starting a next S right when the growth's coming up, right? Those are some of the keys on the product market fit as well, right? So do you have something to share, Sarang? Yeah.
Yeah, I think product market fit is when you just know it.
You just know it, yes.
Yeah, there's no clear definition because metrics obviously change.
Like the money is the bank, right? You know, just going.
Yeah, you just know it.
Yeah.
Right? You wake up in the morning and you see the metrics growing automatically without you doing anything. That's when I think you hit product market fit. And I think another way to look at it is when you're actually, your engineering team is spending time reducing the tech debt, that is probably the time when you don't have product market fit.
Right, right.
When you have product market fit, your actually technical debt keeps growing, I think. Because there is a fit and you are trying to solve that problem and scale. And during that time, your tech debt will just keep on growing, is what my experience has been.
It's interesting. Abhay?
So I'll just give a small example of what Stepsetgo went through. Like initially when we started, we had like an internal beta. Like we shared it amongst our family and friends. And obviously the kind of response that they will give will be completely different than an actual customer. That was like a mistake that we did. And they were saying, yeah, it's great, it's good. But they were not giving, like some of them gave a good feedback. Like some of them said that this might not work. Some of them said that we need to change this feature, etc. Then what we did was eventually we said this is done now, like it's nearly ready. Let's keep it to open beta. Anybody can join in. We shared it on Facebook, on social media, on our own social media platforms, and we started taking feedbacks from our users, like what is their experience, are they facing any problem on certain devices, etc. So the product fit, if we think about it, it needs to be like you need to get a feedback and change it, evolve it over a period of time. The core concept remains the same, but if you can build something around it, and if you can understand the pain point of the user and try to do small pivots,
Right.
It makes more sense.
That's perfect, right? I think that was a great takeaway too, guys.
Just to pinpoint one of the important things that Abhay said, when you're looking for PMF, you need to approach a representative group of your target market. It can't be anyone. It can't be, just people around you. It has to be very well selected. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right results. It's like, the experiment was wrong.
Right. So yeah, the key takeaway was like, know your customers, right? Obviously the product market fit means to different segment in a way. The second is like, you will know when things starts breaking because you took too much technical debt and there's everybody on the call. It's a good sign. The third thing was like catching money in the bank, and like Rajat said, people writing a big check to, I want to fund, give me a pie of your shares. So those are good problems to have, right? In a way, and it's a great way to learn. Let's switch your gears a little bit, right? We talked about tech debt, product market fit and whatnot. I'm pretty sure in your journey, most of you have faced some unique engineering challenge or a business challenges that so when you go like, what, was this the right decision? Am I on the right path? Like, can you, maybe Rajat, we'll start with you. Can you talk about that?
So I think, when we hire people and we are trying to solve for tier 2, tier 3 rural kind of population, what we realized is that the people that we have hired do not belong or do not empathize with that particular user. And that reflects in your product thinking, that reflects in your engineering thinking, that reflects in the content that we are creating, everything. So what we had to do is we basically made sure that we try to hire people from that particular background. B, and as if hiring engineers is not difficult enough already, right? Or product manager.
Yep.
And B, we made sure that we continuously call our customers and make these guys understand what those customers are telling us, so that they are able to, relate or picture that user better in their mind when they're building something. So the longest problem with us is that our diagnostic product doesn't really work well. And the biggest challenge is the test name are in English, right? for a user who is in Hindi, who doesn't know English, as might be written in Braille, what does it matter?
Yeah.
He doesn't understand English, so he can't do it. So there is a huge exercise now going on. कि हर test को हिंदी में लिखें.
Yeah.
And the problem with these terms is that there are no Hindi equivalents in those cases. So there is a hiring challenge. Then when you get to the ground, we basically built a doctor consultation. So live video consultation, because that is what everybody expects. Like if you talk to anybody in tier 1, phone पे बात करके कोई फायदा नहीं, चैट से कोई फायदा नहीं, वीडियो पे होगी तो शायद सेटिस्फैक्शन मिलेगा. गांव में आप जाओ, जिसके नाम में डॉक्टर है लिखा हुआ है ना, ही इज हैप्पी विद टॉकिंग टू दैट पर्सन. फोन पे हो जाए तो बहुत ही बड़ी बात है. तो अब
yes.
So there is a challenge. Like if you go to districts like Sitapur, Lakhimpur, there's like 2 MDs, 4-5 MBBS doctors in overall district, and a lot of quacks have filled that space in and all that stuff. So that's so we built live video consultation. Coming back to the point, and what we realized when we took it there, that even with all the talk of geo and everything else, there's so much buffering that nobody is actually able to do any video. Now there are certain problems that actually need, like skin problems, other problems where a doctor wants to see the patient or what's happening. So we said, let's convert into video recording, let people do recording, and then at some point they can upload it. क्योंकि गांव में या उस जगह पे कोई ना कोई प्लेस होता है, वहाँ से पीपल के पेड़ के नीचे एक जगह होती है जहाँ पर से कनेक्शन बेटर, right? And they can do it from there. So a lot of those things, when you take it to ground, don't work as expected,
right?
And you have to adjust technology to make that use case. So I think that's what we have been learning, that it's not very straight.
Yeah.
You build great technology and you do great marketing and content, and people will come. When you start doing service delivery, you have to start looking at every particular edge case. And
exactly. So these are some great takeaways. Like it's not always the engineering problems that you run into. There are a bunch of assumptions that we make when you're building a business, and you only see them when you actually see the product in action, right? So is there any Rajat?
Yeah, I have something to add to that.
Yeah.
Since this is a tech conference, I'll talk about the tech things. So one of the big mistakes we had done right in the beginning was thinking of scale before we had scale.
Okay.
And it was a massive problem. So I'll give you a real example. So
this was an engineering thinking, right? No.
So this was in 2014. We wanted to put all the contacts in a database that is scalable, and the Google Big Table promised us huge scale.
Yes.
Like, you can grow it to whatever you want. So we thought, hey, great, as soon as we start scaling, we don't have to worry about scaling, right? Because we are on Google, Big Table. So we moved to Big Table. And after moving to Big Table, we realized how poor it was, because it was scalable, yes, but we didn't have the scale, so we were too early for that. And every read and every write on Big Table would cost you money, right? So in 6 months down the road, with like 1/10 or 1/20th the users we have now, we were burning a lot of cash. Started burning a lot of cash.
There you go.
And then moving data out was also a huge pain.
Yeah.
Right. So these are kind of, that made me realize that you should only think of scale when you actually hit it. That is, your server limits are hitting, then what do you want to do? Right? Don't
solve all the problem that doesn't exist. Right. Great. We're running out of time, but I want to get one thing out to the audience and probably get a insight from each of you. If there's one advice that you have to share with the CTOs, the founders, VP in the audience, like what would that be, right? Let's start with Rajat.
Personally, I feel this is like the best time for doing a startup. I was there in US for 8-9 years. We got trained for thinking about very small niches and how it can be a $50 million, $100 million market. But India is not at that stage. India is like, you take a sector, the entire sector is for the taking.
It's yours, yes.
So healthcare sector, entire sector is for the taking. Taxi sector, yes, Ola and Uber are fighting it out, but still there are so many angles to it, bounce and everything else. It's entire sectors are for taking. So when you're thinking from a business perspective, with a product perspective, think India, think very large.
Yeah,
Don't think small, think very large. Think $1 billion markets.
that's a great tip. It's a green field across the board, right? Just fly as far as you can. Shali?
So I actually have two things to share.
Yeah.
One is just a follow up from what my co-panelists were talking about in terms of the challenges, technical challenges. Of course, there's so many that we all face. We can all write books, which nobody's going to read. But at least specifically about the hiring bit, I feel like the initial hires need to some of the things that we looked out for, and I would advise everyone to look out for is adaptability, initiative, and gumption. Because adaptability, of course, because as your product evolves, the core team needs to be able to understand the process and and change things around the product, so they need to be on board. Initiative, because to be honest, there's a lot of firefight that needs to happen, a lot of problems to be solved, and the founders aren't always available.
Right.
Our time is basically split between investors and customers.
Yeah.
I sometimes think that these guys just think that we're all part of the DC universe. We have alter egos in the multiverse. Doesn't work like that. So we're basically not really available all the time. So your core team needs to have initiative and, of course, gumption, resourcefulness to be able to solve those problems themselves. And if you look at it, they're sort of the setting, the stepping stone for the next lot, and they become your leaders of tomorrow.
Right.
So these are some things that we look out for. And then the second thing is, how many of us are techies here? Everybody.
Yeah.
Brilliant. One of the things that I have noticed in all my interaction and, of course, personal experience is that as techies, we become obsessed with the tech. When we started with extended reality, we were like, oh, extended reality is like, it's amazing. It's going to solve the world's problems and everybody wants it. It is great. It's great tech, but any tech is useful when, when it's actually solving real problems. And, if you look at it, nobody actually cares how things work. At least the customer doesn't care. There would be plenty of CTOs who would be like, yeah, we have innovative budgets and like innovation budgets and yeah, let's do a pilot. But the problem is, you can get stuck in pilot purgatory very easily. If you don't have a very defined, result-oriented case study, you're not going anywhere. You're just stuck in pilot purgatory, doing pilots forever. So understanding your tech, being excited about it is great. But the first thing that needs to be identified is, your target market, the representative group, and the problem that you need to solve for them. The problem needs to be defined, and that itself is a process before you figure out how to solve it. So that's something that I would just kind of let you all think about. Anytime that you get very tech obsessed, like slow down, calm down. Nobody else cares. They'll be excited, but yeah.
Those are good tips, right? If you the take away from me was like invest in hiring the first people right. Take your time because they are the one they're gonna set your culture, set your product, take the team and whatnot. And then second, decide what's the job to be done, right? Be very mindful of that before, being obsessed about one specific thing. So, great.
So Rajat talked about India. I'm going to talk about the world. I think we are today in a mobile-first world, right? When you look at India, the geography, how people use the phone is very, very similar to a lot of countries. The entire Southeast Asia, South America, which is Brazil, Argentina, lot of African countries, South Africa, Middle East. So I think other than US and Europe, the rest of the world, the way people use the phone is very, very similar, right? And these are all mobile-first countries. Now, I always ask myself this question. In India, like everybody raised hand when she asked the question, how many of you are techies, right? I mean, we are like the outsourcing capital of the world. We have so many engineers. Why don't we have a single product that is built in India and used by the world, right? In India, we are using all the products that are built in the valley, right? Why is the opposite not the true, right? And I feel that is the opportunity in the next 5 years for Indians to build products that can be used globally. And I think we should do that considering how many techies we have. But you have to take the advice that she just mentioned, saying that don't only think of tech because people use technology, but finally it's the user experience that counts, right? So my suggestion is, try and think of a global market and think simple. Like I said, don't think of scalability before you actually hit there. So use the simplest way to get to product market fit.
Awesome, thanks.
So basically, I remember as they were mentioning about the tech piece of it. So as techies, we tend to do mistake so many times. We tend to dive into it and just dig in. So there are three things which I've learned from my mentors from different companies actually. And the first at IBM, basically, the chief architect told me, never love your code. It's going to change.
Yeah.
It's going to change. Like, there is an evolution there that is going to happen. Never love your code base. You might have written some fancy, graph algorithm or something that might change because the product needs to evolve.
Right.
The second part that I learned was to shoot a bird. You don't have to build a rocket, right?
Yeah.
This is generally we tend to do that. We tend to dive into tech so deep that we forget what is the product about, what it is trying to solve, right? And the third piece is that never build your product around technologies. Build your product technology agnostic. Think about the features and try to evaluate different tools that are available, be it open source or paid one. Try to figure out, which suits in better, and that's how you go about it. Don't build, like this technology is highly scalable and it will work perfectly. Like it will work perfectly well. That's what I think. So I will go with that. Don't do that. And maybe also you think that Node.js, for example, was a language that was used and it's widely used because front-end engineers were able to write back-end code as well. So that's a good thing to have. But as you starting fresh, you will say that I will maybe go with Golang or Kotlin because it's trending. But you'll have to go through that learning phase.
Right.
That's a mistake
Right.
that you do right there, right? So don't do that. Just dive into it and see what you have in hand and just go ahead with that.
Right.
So I think that's yeah. So the statement that my manager once made was, आज Docker है, कल Poker होगा.
Exactly.
Right? So you just have to build the it being agnostic. You just have to take the product out in the market.
Yeah. Get the product out. That's the key point in a way, right? Just fast, get something outside, right? And I'd once heard, I think it was Linkerd founder who said, if you have shipped a product that you're not ashamed of, you're probably too late, right? So, and don't try and get the engineers and ourselves, I'm going to write this great code, I'm going to make this beautiful product, it's not ready, does not look great. And you just wait for that, right? Just if you're not ashamed of it, it's probably too late.
Customers don't look at the code, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? So, you guys, this has been fantastic. Before we wrap up, can I please have a big round of applause for the panel, right?